Zizzonia is an action RPG that wears its inspiration on its sleeves, mainly the Zelda games of old, and introduces you to a vibrant world on the cusp of a great battle between the forces of good and evil. You take on the fight as a young boy known as Regret, who sets out to take down those responsible for the death of his father. The story is admittedly predictable and on the whole quite forgettable, but it facilitates what Zizzonia gets so right, and that's the gameplay. From the get-go, you're given the option of several classes. If you decide to play as a paladin, Regret will have access to magical attacks, whereas a warrior you'll get to carry around a huge sword and be power-based, and if you choose the assassin class, you'll be a fast-moving killer who uses two blades. Naturally, each has their own strengths and weaknesses, and getting to play through the game a few different ways after you're done is also a great bonus. Now out in the field, there are two main factors that you'll have to keep in mind, the first being your health and the second being your energy. As you progress through the game, Regret will grow tired and hungry. If his energy ever runs out, you won't be able to do as many actions or launch as many attacks, so obtaining food littered throughout the environment is vital to your success. Further complicating this issue though is the limited weight that you can carry at any one time, and it soon becomes a juggling act of trying to maintain a consistent amount of food whilst making sacrifices when it comes to any loot you may come across and want to keep. It's a great system that will no doubt keep you on your toes throughout the playthrough, so for those fond of old school action adventures sprinkled with intelligent and rewarding mechanics, Zizzonia is for you. There is no shortage of Musou games on the PSP, with the likes of Dynasty Warriors making an appearance. Players were never short on options, but Hakuki Warriors is one that never got its chance in the spotlight. You take control of one of several different warriors, which serve as the Shogun police, as you band up to take on an invading army that happens to be armed to the teeth with modern weapons. With only a sword by your side, you're tasked with mowing down wave after wave of enemies as you fight your way through their ranks. Now when it comes to combat, everything consists of 3 basic attacks. You've got light, charged and special, which can be strung together to create some impressive combos to keep your targets at bay. As you take down these enemies, something known as the Sakura gauge will fill up, and upon completely filling it, you can then perform one of the many special moves that have the power to turn the tide of even the most daunting battles. What helps set Kakuki apart from others of its kind is the customization options that allow you to craft several different items, as well as unlock a suite of different costumes once you've completed the game. This lends a bit of longevity to the game, which is admittedly a bit short and won't take too long to make your way through, but with the selection of different characters as well as these special unlocks for each of them, there's a lot of incentive to start another run once you've finished your first. On the whole, if Musou's your thing, then Hakuki Warriors will for sure provide a compelling experience. Mimana feels like something straight out of the early 90s, a game that's completely stuck in the past and brought absolutely nothing new to the table. For all its shortcomings though, it still provided a pretty decent, albeit basic adventure that any longtime fan of RPGs could enjoy, and saw you taking on the role of Krace, who's best described as an absolute knob. He's a member of a guild, but his obnoxious and rather crass approach to life has left him friendless and with no drive to succeed. However, this changes one day when he meets Sophie, a girl that goes on to help him change his ways by asking him to follow her as she locates several mystical gems scattered across the kingdom. The comedy begins immediately as Krace hates children and Sophie is a child. She's happy, but Krace is a twat and constantly finds new ways to demonstrate what a jerk he can be, which really contributes to the humour throughout the game. Now, as with any RPG, battles are a huge part of the experience and they all play out in real time, very much in the manner of the Tales series, and allows you to rack up huge combos and execute special abilities. You'll be leveling up and learning new skills along the way that manage to keep each battle engaging, but to be honest, it can end up getting a bit repetitive due to the hack and slash nature of the setup. Now visually, the sprite work is simply sublime. That gives each character and enemy you'll encounter a real sense of personality and style. Sure, it may look crude by today's standards, but it's clear that a lot of attention was paid to the small details to help bring everything on screen to life. Overall, Mimana won't be for everyone, and instead will likely only appeal to the hardcore fans amongst you that are willing to overlook some of the game's rather mundane aspects. At its core, Street Riders is an arcade-style racer that throws weapons and a healthy dose of hip-hop culture into the mix to create something that's quite unique on the PSP. Originally a PS2 game known as 187 Ride or Die, the handheld port manages to retain many aspects of its home console counterpart, mainly the intriguing and at times manic gameplay that makes up the game. Our sees you being tasked with navigating one of the many urban tracks whilst dodging traffic and drifting around corners to stay out on top, with the great equalizer being the gunplay that helps give you an extra edge. There's a range of different vehicles to jump into, which all differ in their speed and handling, which makes trying out each of them an essential task in order to find one that you can get to grips with. Matching this selection is the wide range of weaponry, from standard machine guns to rocket launchers and pistols, which all have their role to play. The shooting controls are demanding but intuitive, as with the default weapon the gunner can only shoot straight ahead or to the right, but once the player drives over one of the floating power-ups that are scattered around the course, you're then given the freedom to shoot wherever you please. It can be tricky trying to control the car and shoot at the same time, but it all soon becomes second nature after some time with the game. When it comes down to it, Street Riders feels like a grown-up Mario Kart, just less banana skins and more machine guns. It's a hell of a lot of fun, but suffers from not being easy to pick up and play, requiring you to get used to the many mechanics that comprise it as a whole in order to enjoy what it brings to the table. The PSP and RPGs went hand in hand, with the console soon garnering a reputation for its abundance of unforgettable adventures. But one title that seemingly fell through the cracks though was Mana Kema. At the core of the game is the creation of items called synthesis. Towards this end, the player obtains recipes and must then collect the necessary ingredients to create them. Various areas around the academy that you call home can be explored to hunt monsters and, more importantly, gather these ingredients. They may be dropped by monsters, found by cutting grass, hidden in smashable crates and barrels, or even fished up from lakes. Each trek through one of these areas, which basically functions as the game's dungeons, is sure to fill your stocks of ingredients, and is usually followed by lots of item creation once back safely at the academy. This system is vital to leveling up throughout the game, as in order to do so you need to create items that are locked through the use of something known as the growth book. It shares much in common with the spear grid system from Final Fantasy X, and through the use of AP, which is acquired during battle, you're free to grow your character as you please throughout your time with the game. Speaking of battles, they are turn-based in nature and employ a row system with 3 characters in the front providing the bulk of your attacks, and with 3 at the back off screen essentially supporting them, who can be switched out at any time. What starts at trading low damage blows with the enemy in the first chapter soon becomes a chaotic but strategic affair of constantly swapping in characters at the right time to deal the optimal amount of damage on any given foe. If you're looking to jump into a new RPG on the PSP, then Mana Kema is well worth checking out. Nova, or Near Orbit Vanguard Alliance, began its life on the iPhone. It was one of the first games that proved that a viable first-person shooting experience was possible on the device, which was made all the more better with its eventual port to the PSP. It puts you into the shoes of Captain Cal, an unwilling hero who's dispatched to resolve a mysterious space conflict and protect the people of Earth who now live above it in colonies. The story is pretty forgettable, but gameplay more than makes up for it, and arms the player with a range of inventive weaponry to take on each threat. Now there's about 12 levels to make your way through, which each bring their own distinct challenge to the table. You have to navigate a spaceship in one level, going from room to room rapidly to avoid running out of oxygen. In other stages you have to navigate through expansive areas on otherworldly planets, or take out approaching enemies with turrets. There's no denying the clear influence of Halo throughout Nova, and this is no more apparent than when it comes to its presentation and style. From the weapons to its locales and characters, it's clear that Bungie's masterpiece was a huge inspiration for Nova. This may come off as cheap to some people, but I feel it does do enough to help it stand on its own, with the enemies being a real highlight and the handful of boss encounters that help bookend some of the stages. While it's nowhere near the best FPS on the PSP, it's still a solid game that's definitely worth checking out if you're fond of the genre. Nayuta represented Falcom's efforts to bring together 2 of their most popular series, those being Legend of Heroes and Ys. The game serves as a side story in the Heroes universe and draws upon the lessons they learned whilst developing Ys, offering the best of both worlds in what ultimately feels like a worthwhile adventure to undertake. You play as Nayuta, a child who yearns to find out what lies beyond the island he calls home, and after meeting a fairy named Noi, he answers the call to adventure and travels to several mysterious continents while helping the their leaders in ridding the lands of evil. The gameplay takes the form of a real-time action RPG and relies on the tried and tested hack-and-slash mechanics many will already be accustomed to. With both one-handed and two-handed weapons, Nayuta can perform various combinations and use Noi to cast spells. In addition, there are dodge rolls and double jumps, and landing successful hits creates a chain that increases strength, intelligence, critical hit rate, and other attributes. One huge aspect of Nayuta is loot, and the various items that serve as the game's way of rewarding the player for their hard work. Everything you collect throughout each stage you visit can be taken back to a museum in the hub world and can be traded in for new gear that offers up new skills and benefits during battle. This is the main way to progress in the game, and with so many different items available, it can easily keep you occupied for quite some time. Overall, Nayuta is a great little RPG to get into, and with it now being available on both the PlayStation 4 and Switch, as well as this version on the PSP, it's never been easier to jump into it and try it out for yourself. SWAT Target Liberty has to be one of the most underrated tactical shooters of all time, and much like the title suggests, it sees you taking command of a SWAT team as you're propelled into a wide variety of different scenarios. As you would expect, the focus isn't so much on just the shooting aspect of the game, and it's the tactics and planning that take front and center. In addition to selecting the gear that each member of your squad will carry, you can also decide which specific SWAT members to assign to your squad before each mission. Each member has a different set of skills, such as observation, which gives you a greater detection and visibility range, breaching, which enables the member to obtain compliance from suspects more quickly, or negotiation, which enables you to obtain more information from suspects or civilians who are being questioned. Every character's skill level will rise as squad members are promoted. Soon you'll discover that your tactical options have significantly expanded at that point, and your main character will have much more authority over your squad movements, for example. As time goes on, you'll get greater combat effectiveness in addition to being able to evaluate the health and cooperation of suspects and civilians. All of these little systems add up to a really enjoyable tactical shooter, so if you've always been fond of these type of games, you should try SWAT Target Liberty, instead of believing the negative reviews that mainstream game critics have written about it that no doubt contributed to its relative obscurity. Originally released on the PlayStation 2, Formula Front eventually found its way to the PSP and held up surprisingly well considering the limitations of the handheld. It sees you commanding a newly formed squad consisting of 5 armored core units, and in the futuristic sport known as Formula Front, it is your job as an architect to put together and adjust the units so that you can compete against other mechs. This aspect of the game is the main driving force behind the experience, and for that reason alone it might turn off some casual players, as most of your time is taken up by navigating menus and tinkering with various options the game serves up. For hardcore fans though, it's a dream come true, and the amount of customization is nigh on endless, with a copious amount of weapons, body types and armor to choose from, which all have a noticeable effect on the battlefield. Now combat is where Formula Front truly comes into its own, and allows you to either manually participate or leave it up to the AI to duke it out. The controls are incredibly tight and responsive, and change depending on the weight or type of your machine, so it's essential to try out a good amount of different setups in order to settle into one that suits your playstyle. Now by far one of Formula Front's most endearing aspects are the visuals. Every single component is intricately designed, and it's amazing to see how they all work together to form a massive robot. The AC units have good animation, and their movements across the battlefield can even seem graceful at points, along with amazing weapon effects such as explosions, laser beams, rockets and machine gun rounds flying all over the screen. If you're a mech fan, Formula Front will in no way disappoint. Fate Extra is essentially a dungeon crawler that's based on a popular Japanese visual novel by the name of Fate Stay Night, and similar to the book, the game has a captivating plot that centers on masters who command their servants to carry out their wishes. It all takes place in a school, where the students are participants in a tournament, with the ultimate prize being the Holy Grail, a device that grants wishes. In order to survive the weekly elimination battles, you must defeat other masters with the help of your legendary soul, a magical servant who fights enemies in your place. This is where combat comes into play and is hands down the best feature in the game. It takes the form of a rock paper scissors system in which you're given 3 actions to perform: attack, guard and break, with each being strong or weak against the other. The problem is that you have no idea what actions your opponent will make, and because of these limitations, fighting becomes a guessing game that pushes you to learn the patterns of opposing attacks. The more often you encounter a specific type of monster, the more pieces of these patterns your servant unlocks, keeping each encounter from becoming too difficult. Now for the PSP, this is one of the best looking games you'll find on the system. The dungeons, while at first maybe a little bare looking, get progressively more beautiful, but it's during battle where the visual flair begins to shine. Each move and effect is masterfully portrayed and brings about a sort of grandiose impression, especially during many of the boss fights that make up the adventure. On the whole, the repetitive nature of the battles may not be everyone's cup of tea, but thanks to a stellar story and its stylish presentation, it's easy to recommend you try this one out. Well, that does it for today's video. Keep an eye out for part 2, as that will be coming up soon, so don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to get notified about new videos. You can follow me on all of the socials, which are linked below, to stay up to date, and also join my growing community on Discord to meet many like-minded gamers to continue the conversation with. I'd like to give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters: Rhino, Skilljim, Shuden, Richard, Amy, Daniel, Dio, Omar, Strider, Pierre, Carl, Awesome Jacket Dude, Maximus, Scott, Alfred, Terry, Ryan, Alex, GameCube Galaxy, Curse Salaryman, Fake, Eddie Hu, and Paddy J for their continued support that helps make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining my Discord or supporting the channel through Patreon, you'll find all of these links down below. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I'll catch you next time.